Very, very good evening, Mota Bhai. Kim Cho. Mota Bhai, it's around 6 a.m. in Singapore. And it is the first sleepless night of November 2020. Generally, I'm having around 2 to 3 sleepless nights in a month, and I sleep very late in the night. I love research. And today, I would like to say thanks to Center for Monitoring and Indian Economy for giving us very rightful data, but unfortunately, cracking this data requires a humongous amount of time, maybe several months. So, that time I do not have. So, what I did is that I made some conclusions out of the data which I'm having. And I hope that the young generation, which is coming and wanting to enter into the world of finance, will get some information out of it. So, before I proceed, let me tell you that Treasury Consulting is a strong believer of a word called immunization. We strongly believe that immunization is the most essential function of any financial institution. And what is my definition of financial institution? I will definitely explain. And to be very honest, there are many movies which are made by Hollywood based on 2008 financial crisis, and directly or indirectly many such movies referred to the world called immunization. And I think that's not bad as well, to be honest. Let it be honest, that is not bad as well. There are three kind of financial institutions we have in the world of finance. Number one is definitely the banks. When it comes to bank, every country of the globe is having three kind of banks. Number one, the public sector banks owned by the government. Singapore having public sector banks, India having public sector banks, Dubai, almost every country having public sector bank. US is not having any model of public sector bank, rather they are having model of Freddie and Fannie. Freddie and Fannie. The second is definitely the non-banking financial corporation. I really doubt there is any country in the globe who can claim that they do not have any model of non-banking financial corporation. I really doubt about that. And third is definitely, I call them the pseudo finance companies, which is venture capitalist and private equities. I really doubt that in the world of 2020 there is any country of the globe who can run without the help of venture capitalist and private equity. Rather, I would love to say that these institutions are really helping the countries a lot. Like today, I was watching news that Mr. Buffett invested in some Canadian company. I think it's a real estate company, and it's 2 years. Mr. Buffett exited out of this company, and this company reported a record EPS. Several news today I read on Bloomberg TV about the private equities, where private equities either investing or they are exiting. I'm sure that another 5 years from now, probably by 2025, private equities might be replacing non-banking financial corporations. Or alternatively speaking, private equities would be either joining hand or entering into non-banking financial corporations. In that regards, immunization is a very important factor. And I think the way American banks handled immunization in 2008, you knew it, but the way they handled immunization in 2020 is excellent. In 2008, everyone know how they handled it, and in 2020, I gave American banks at least 9.5 out of 10. They handled it beautifully. Whether it is JP Morgan, Standard Chartered, Goldman, I know Standard Chartered is not an American bank, JP Morgan, Citi, Goldman, Wells Fargo, they handled it very well. That is a separate thing, that all these success sometimes or most of the times not end up translating into the share price. If I compare the share price of American banks with the Indian banks, then I am sure that American bank CEOs must be thinking that we are really undervalued. But if I compare the balance sheet size of an American bank with Indian banks, then Indian bank must be thinking we are not undervalued, we are zero valued. If I compare the balance sheet size of Goldman Sachs with Indian banking system, only one bank speaks. Forget JP Morgan, Citi, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, and list is very, very long, guys. So not everything is reflected in share price. There are a lot of things which reflect in the asset value also. But many people, even today in 2020, believe that everything to be reflected in the share price. Example, if I speak about Goldman, JP Morgan, then maybe their share price is not at par on a constant currency note with Indian banks, but their asset size is not less than 4 times 0 of Indian banks. It means I need to write 4 zeros to compare only one American bank with the Indian banks. That is where exactly they stand. Forget the disclosure. In disclosure, they are way beyond. According to Center for Monitoring in Indian Economy, in 2007 to 2008, the total borrowings by NBFC, sorry, between 2007 to 2008, the bank lending to NBFC is around 79,000 crores. Okay, guys, it's around 79,000 crores. And in 2019 to 2020, which is precisely 12 years, it is around 8,07,000 crores. More than 10 times. More than 10 times. Let me precisely compute this number to you. $10.22 times. In 12 years, bank lending to NBFCs grew by 10.22 times. And you would be very surprised to know that the CAGR, which is the growing rate, is around 21.4% per year. It means it is growing by 21.4%. And this is as per the data. I not computed 21.4%. The newspaper called this systematic risk, but I call this as issue of immunization. Hey guys, did you heard about the recent statement by the Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank of India? Very recently, he made a very pointful statement. In English, the meaning of the pointful statement means to the point. But he said that NBFCs have been the largest net borrower of funds from the financial system, of which more than half of the funds were from the banks, followed by mutual fund and insurance companies. And he made a point that NBFCs with a huge base should be converted as a bank, but easier said than done, to be honest. Now, this is what the lending by banks to NBFCs. How much lending by non-banks to NBFCs? Do we have this data? Sorry, I don't have this data. Do we have lending by mutual fund to NBFCs? I don't have this data. But I can reach to that data, that I understand. So only banks lending to NBFCs in the last 12 years reached to around 10.22 times with a CAGR of 21.4%. A great scientist of the world, the greatest and the greatest nuclear scientist of the world, Mr. Einstein, said that there are 4 layers of knowledge. One is the data. Second is the information. Third is the intellectual. And fourth is the wisdom. I repeat, he said that one is the data. Second is the information. Third is the intellectual. And fourth is the wisdom. And I think Einstein is way above wisdom. I got this data that in the last 10 years, in the last 12 years, the bank got 10.22, bank lended 10.22 times to NBFCs. But how can I use this data? That's more important. Because I believe in Einstein. See him at the back. And I think in most of the videos you see him, right? So I was thinking. Then I thought, let's do one thing. Take the balance sheet of top 3 NBFCs of India. They are in public domain, listed, and data is available on Reuters or Bloomberg. Take the balance sheet of top 3 Indian banks. I know that disclosure is always an issue. And I got some information about their lending pattern, which means that if bank is lending, it means it's an asset of bank while it's a liability of the NBFCs. And then I did a very intricate valuation, which I told you, concept of indicative value. Although I am very clear with the statement that the complete analysis not yet done, it requires huge amount of time, and time is something which I don't have, to be honest. So what I did is I compared the top 3 NBFCs with the top 3 Indian banks, and I got some fantastic data. Although disclosure is always an issue. I got to know the correlation between that bank stock with the NBFC stock. And that is known as TRA, Total Return Analysis. When we compare two securities with each other, or we can compare a security with index. But while reading this data, I got something that just made me wonder. And what was that? Let me read this for you. And that is something very important, guys, which we really need to understand, which is that the quantum of NBFC borrowing from the lenders has grown substantially over the years. Between 31st March 2008 to 31st March 2020, there is a CAGR of 21.4%. And this also reflected the fact that from March 2017 till March 2020, it is around 4 trillion. It means out of 8.0407 trillion, approximately 4 trillion lended in the last 3 years. Last 3 years. It means the total lending done is around 8 lakh crores. No, 7,20,000 crores in the last 12 years. Out of 7,20,000 crores, 4 lakh crore landed only in the last 3 years. Then I used Reuters and computed the return on few selected NBFC stocks in the last 4 years and 3 years, and the return of the banks also. And I got yet another news. But I was not satisfied, because one thing I was not aware as of now, how much is the lending by the mutual funds and the other non-banking piece to NBFCs. And I got some data. Between 31st March 2009 to 31st March 2019, which is 10 years, the total asset of NBFC grew at 18.6% per year, reaching 51.47 trillion. You getting something? NBFC asset as at 31st March 2019 is 51 lakh crores. It means assets equal to liabilities. Am I correct? If asset is equal to liability and 8 lakh crores worth of funds they received from banks, it means 51 minus 8, which is precisely 43, is received by non-banking channels. I don't have time to look at the balance sheet of all NBFCs, and I'm sorry that that level of information I do not have as of now. But what that clearly tells me, 51 minus 8 equal to 43 is the total funding given by the non-banking channels to NBFCs. Is that funding is by retail players? I don't know. Is that funding is by mutual funds? I don't know. Is that funding is by some capital market instrument, non-convertible debentures and so on and so forth? I don't know. But what I know is that the total asset of NBFCs is around 51.47 trillion. And I would like to thank you, Center for Monitoring an Indian Economy, for resolving me an issue which I was focusing from the last 2 to 3 months. Is that why few NBFC stocks always grew irrespective of the market? You know where I'm getting. Even today, when I have noticed that the growth in Kotak Mahindra Bank, Axis Bank, ICICI Bank is one side and increase in few NBFCs is on the other side without any information. And that helps me resolve that problem. And that is really very, very important help. But I'm really surprised that if I statistically look at this data, media may be terming this as a systematic analysis, media may be terming this as anything, but this data crunching requires a huge effort. I don't term this as a systematic risk because I term this as an immunization risk, because handling that much amount of money, auditing that much amount of money, and accurately auditing that much amount of money is really a big strain, and especially with the limited resources. 51 lakh crore is the asset size of NBFC. And that raises many questions. I would like to conclude this topic with the statement that this is the first time in the last 2 to 3 months I have enjoyed reading an article of the media which has given me so much statistical information which is very seldom available in the public domain, or even if it is available on Reuters, you need to work very hard to retrieve that, and time is definitely a factor. I would like to thank you, Center for Monitoring an Indian Economy, for resolving a very important, I can say, a kind of, a kind of question that why few NBFC stocks always grew more than banks irrespective of any information. This riddle which I was facing is now resolved. And thankfully, due to this, our desk would be able to take more better decisions in NBFC in the upcoming time. And we are very happy for that. And we thank you, Center for Monitoring an Indian Economy, for providing such wonderful data. Having said that, if more data is provided, then it would be very good. But anyways, this data is sufficient, at least half beginning. Better beginning is half job done. Rest is the help of Reuters and Bloomberg how to retrieve the data. But guys, we really need to understand few things before we close down the session. Number one, how much of this money is invested in real estate? I don't know. But we understand why I'm referring to real estate. How much of this money is NPA? I don't know. Are we computing ECL, expected credit losses? Really not. What would happen if when Basel 3 will get implemented across the globe? The day will surely come. Are we able to resolve this issue, or we stick at that point of time? Long ago, a research suggests that in Basel 3, Indian banks needs 90 billion of capital. Long ago. And now I think this is not 90, this is way above 90. And how much is the latest number? I don't know. How much fresh capital is required by the NBFCs once they move to move to Basel 3, especially Pillar 3 of the Basel 3? I don't know. There are many questions which we need to answer in that regards. And more important thing, what we need to answer is that how now we are able to answer that how a NBFC stock move relatively much better than a bank, even though there is no information about that NBFC in the public domain, that why it is growing. That's very important. And this is what it is known as data analytics. But that is only possible provided you know how to read the balance sheet of the bank. I'm able to resolve this in 2 to 3 hours of research because I understand which section of the bank balance sheet I need to look and which section of the NBFC balance sheet I need to look to get this done. That's very important. This is Rahul from Treasury Consulting. You know our WhatsApp 9818485155. If you have any question pertaining to our hedge fund desk, our paid programs, our training courses, and so many things, you can definitely WhatsApp us 9818485155. Thank you very much, and I will continue my path of research. I will continue to minutely looking at each thing, because data is the most important thing we are having. And one of the important things a hedge fund needs to understand is the data, because data determines the ability of the decision. Have a good time, guys. Talk soon.